Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Acceptance of Life podcast. And we are recording from the Amsterdam studio.
We are. I'm
Yeah.
excited to be here.
It's great. We just came back from Switzerland, from a beautiful week in the Swiss Alps, where we did a lot of running. And Vajin ran the Swiss Alpine Ultramarathon, a race over 82 kilometers in the Swiss mountains. And it really nicely ties in with our theme of today's podcast, which is a spiritual approach to running.
Yes.
And so, I think we have a lot to say about that. I mean, we are both runners. We both run over 20 years of running experience. We're both long distance runners. You're more in the ultra world. So you mostly focus on races that are longer than the standard marathon, which is 42K. And I think we both have maybe some nice things to say about the spiritual approach to running, because we are both in our spiritual community. Running plays a really, really big part, an important part. And our guru Sri Chinmoy was very, very big on running. He promoted it. He encouraged us to run as his students. And he himself ran. He ran 22 marathons and 5 ultra marathons back in the day. And we put on a lot of races as well with our spiritual community all over the world. So let's dive right in, shall we?
Yes. And as is my wont, I will often start very far back away from the topic that we're going to talk about.
But we gradually meander through.
We will get there at the end. And I think today's episode will be a really useful one for people, because life is full of challenging and difficult things. And running is one of the more challenging and difficult things that one can do, especially running for long distances. So if you can find a way to do difficult things more harmoniously, with more grace and poise, and coming from a deeper part of your being, that can become something that you can transfer to so many different areas of your life. And so for me, let's start at the point 2,500 years ago. There was a prince who was born in a place called Lumbini, and he was born into absolute opulence. And so he was surrounded by all of the greatest pleasures of the world.
Just going to give you a little spoiler alert. This is going to be about the Buddha. Yes. So people don't think it's some random fellow that, they can tune out. No, it's the Buddha story.
So the Buddha, though, saw through all of the lovely experiences that he was surrounded with, all the pleasures of the world, and he saw through to the heart of the matter. And he came to the diagnosis that all life is suffering. So even if in this particular moment you think, well, my life's not that bad, my job's going well, my relationship's fine, everything's good, there is always something coming that is going to cause you suffering. And it may be the loss of your job, or the loss of a pet, or it could be illness, it could be an injury, it could be anything. But there is, for all of us, suffering is always fast approaching. And he made a really good diagnosis of the cause of suffering, though. So he said all life is suffering, but there's actually a cause to that suffering. And he diagnosed it. A lot of people use the word desire, but I think a more accurate term is clinging and grasping. So either we're grasping for something that we don't have. We're wanting a particular experience. We're wanting a particular material possession, or we're wanting something outside of us to make ourselves whole again. So we're grasping for things. But then also on the other side of that, we don't think of, is we're clinging on to things. We're clinging on to our life remaining how it is right now. There's some things in our life that we really like, and we don't want those things to change. So we're holding on to them too tightly.
Like the good things.
Yeah.
Sometimes even the bad things.
Yeah, exactly. Both, we can cling on to both. And that causes suffering as well, because life is always changing. And so whatever we have now, it's not ever certain that we'll have that in a week's time or a month's time.
There was even a third category of suffering that the Buddha talked about, which was the subtle suffering of just not being connected to the source, like the suffering that's inherent in life itself, being in a physical body, and that causes just distress, discomfort. And also the fact that you're not anymore connected to the source as you were in the soul's world, just creates a kind of low level background suffering.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that sense of disconnection and alienation, as though we're strangers in a strange land.
Division, exactly.
And so when we think about suffering, then we think, like, how I like to think about it is in life we have to deal with difficult things. So as soon as we call something painful or suffering, we already put a particular lens or a particular frame around the experience. And I think most of the time in life, we simply have experiences, and it's up to us to give a meaning to those experiences. So I don't want to already start by saying all of these experiences are bad. So I won't use suffering, but I will say that we have to do difficult things in life. So we have to deal with the realities of life.
Like just discomfort.
Yeah, the discomfort of having a physical body, and the knowledge that all the people we know at some point are also going to pass away. And, you know, our beloved pets are going to pass away, and our businesses are going to end at some point, and all of these things.
Yeah.
So that's basically the state of the game that we've come into. We've come into this game, and these are kind of the foundational rules of the game. You can't avoid these things. And a lot of people try and pretend that these aren't the reality, and human beings do an amazing job of putting these things out of our mind.
Yeah, we suspend our disbelief about death, for instance, or about the impermanence of all things.
Yeah. And so what I think is really useful is finding a way to go through life, accepting and facing up to these realities and learning to deal with them in the most integrated and deeply spiritual fashion possible, because that's going to serve you over the longest period of time. That's going to serve you right throughout your life. And so running for me is a metaphor of the hardship and suffering that we have to go through by just the nature of having a physical body.
Yeah.
And so when we try and make ourselves fitter and stronger in the physical realm, we're always having to fight against this resistance of both the world, but also of our own body.
Yeah, the body's natural state is kind of lethargic. It doesn't want to move. It likes to rest. It likes to relax and enjoy comfort, which is not bad. It's just that, that lethargy also creates a certain unwillingness, a certain resistance once we have to become active.
Yeah. And so running is one of the best ways to actually learn to overcome this, because running is something that needs to be done on a regular basis to improve it. It's not like playing a team sport or training at the gym. You can probably train 2 or 3 times a week and get a lot of success. Whereas running is something that if you want to get good at it, you need to run every day. Right. And then people who want to get really good at it will end up running twice a day.
Like you've been doing.
Or 3 times a day. So yeah, I've been running twice a day, most days of the week for the last 20 years. Yeah. And so, but to get to that point, you want to find something stronger than motivation. And so I think that's a really good point to start at here, that we need to find a way, a system to approach doing hard things that doesn't just rely on your motivation.
But motivation is good, right? It gets you out the door, and
motivation is a really useful thing. And often at the beginning of a journey, we need some inspiration and we need some motivation to start the journey.
Yeah.
But then if you're on a journey for a really long period of time, motivation is not enough. Motivation will wane. So one day you'll be highly motivated, and then 2 days later you'll have zero motivation. And it was actually great. I saw a great example of this just on the weekend. There was a big heavyweight boxing bout, and it was Usyk from Ukraine against Dubois from England. And this Ukrainian gentleman, I think he's in his late 30s, so he's an older guy, and he's already had a lot of fights throughout his career. And the most interesting thing was, so he won the fight. And
the other guy was younger.
Yeah, he was definitely younger. I don't know exactly how old he was, but the best thing for me was the post-fight press conference. And so it was really late at night. You know, he'd just been out in the stadium in front of hundreds of thousands of fans, and just had this incredible experience. But he spoke so eloquently and so succinctly about this very topic. And so they asked him, how do you stay motivated for your fights? So he's now defended the heavyweight belt, the undisputed heavyweight belt, 3 times. And they say, how do you stay motivated? And he made this exact point. He said, motivation is not enough. It's like, I can be motivated today, but tomorrow I'm not motivated. So what happens? Do I not train? Yeah. It's like, no, I have to train. So what is far more important than motivation, he said, is discipline. And discipline for me, it ties in with a spiritual quality called sacrifice. And so sacrifice is really the fundamental skill, one of the greatest ideas that human beings have ever come up with or understood about how to play the game of life. And the idea of sacrifice is you becoming willing to give up short-term pleasures, to give up something you want to do right now, to instead to do something which is more difficult, but will have greater benefits for you in the long term.
Yeah, it's like slow dopamine.
Yeah.
It's not the quick fixes, but it's like
Yeah.
sacrificing the quick fixes for the longer fix, which takes
Yeah.
as long as it's totally against the nature of the body.
Yeah, so the body wants to have its pleasure right in this moment.
Yeah, so even the mind.
Yeah.
Would have that.
So you want to have a nap right now, or you want to sit down and do nothing, or you just want to
Eat something.
be mindlessly entertained. Whereas to do hard things over a long period of time, you need to always be able to step out of that moment and see the bigger picture. You need to be able to see, okay, I want to be in 6 months' time in a better position than I am now. And how do I go about doing that? And one of the first things is being willing to give up those small pleasures now, to do the training, to go do the job you don't want to do, to sit down and do the task or the chores that you know need to be done.
Yeah, you really have to plan that. You really have to tell yourself, kind of program yourself to do that.
Yeah.
Like you have to create habits, right? Yeah. Like it's not just your willpower. I want to do this now.
Yeah.
Your willpower, like motivation, waxes and wanes.
Yeah.
And it takes energy, actually, willpower.
Yeah.
But if you have made the decision at some point, this is my habit, I'm going to do this, then, you don't need any more willpower to fuel that. It's like I think the slow dopamine release over the long term just brings you so much joy and so much meaning that you're able to sustain this kind of habits for long periods of time.
Yeah. And then there's one way. So I also coach athletes, and one of the ways I talk to them about thinking about this is that you want to think that you now and you 6 months away, it's not the same. You're not the same person. So the you that exists 6 months into the future is not the same person as you are today. So many things and experiences will have happened that you will be changed. You'll be a different person in some way.
You mean the qualities you have, or the experiences you have?
Actually, like on some fundamental level, who you are will have changed.
Yeah.
And so you will have
small ways.
Yeah, and like subtle. It's not that you're a radically different person, but that person is not the exact same person as you are today. Mm. And one of the things which is really interesting about human beings is that often we're so much better at doing things for other people.
Yeah.
And so there's a really great experiment that someone has done looking at that. And they compared people's willingness to go to the doctor and to take the medication for themselves versus their pets. So they saw that if your dog was unwell, nearly everyone would try and take their dog somewhere to get a vet to look at it. And then when they get given the medication, nearly all of dog owners will be quite good at giving the dog the medication at the right time through the period. So, and if they compare that to the same thing for the people, often people would put off going to see a doctor to get something looked at. And then even when they do get prescribed something, they normally, the vast majority of people will actually not take it as prescribed.
Yeah.
So it showed we're actually much better at looking after our animals than we are looking after ourselves.
I even noticed that in the restaurant when I'm making coffee for someone, let's say, and I have 2 shots and I have saved 1 shot and I want to have a coffee myself. And I make both of them. I always will give the better coffee to the customer.
Good to know.
Of course I would.
Good to know.
And I would always take the bad one myself. It's kind of like ingrained. Of course you do that. It's like, it's not something noble or but it's like, and I also feel like, let me get the scraps. Let the good stuff go to the guests. Like I think everybody's like that.
Yeah. And so when you think about dealing with yourself, if you imagine that the person you're doing the hard things for today, you're making the sacrifices for today, is someone else, and that person will be incredibly grateful to you for making that sacrifice, it actually changes the way you look at it. So if I imagine that I'm helping you train for something that's going to be really challenging, say you're going to race your first 100-kilometer race in the mountains. If I tell you, okay, there's going to be an Abhinabha standing on that start line in 6 months' time, and what you do today will either make his life more easy or more difficult. It's going to either make his day go more smoothly or it's going to make his life much harder.
So you take yourself as a different person.
Yeah, exactly. So you look at that and you say, wow, if I want to help that person because that person is also me in some way, the 6 months in the future, but I'm willing to make that sacrifice to make that person's life better.
I like it.
And it's a really funny thing, because it's only a very small change in the way you're looking at things, but it does make a fundamental difference in how you feel in that moment. You think, okay, I'm not doing it for me right now, because me right now just wants to stay at home, sit on the couch.
I don't want to do it.
But if I think of that person, I think, okay, I really want to help that person.
Yeah, like say for instance, like a total thought experiment. You need to do this run to save somebody's life. Yeah. Like you were in a situation like, if you go out running right now, you save somebody's life. Yeah. You do it. You know, even though it's raining and you're super tired. Hey man, I have to save somebody's life.
But you will save someone's life. It will be your own life in the future.
Fantastic. It's a great experiment to do that. To think of yourself as a separate, as somebody else that you're doing it for later. Like,
and so that for me is a really powerful first step. So it's like, look at where you are now and realize where you are now is not where you want to be. And I like this great saying that the most dangerous words in the English language, let's say the English language, you're fine. You're fine how you are. Because no one's fine how they are. Yeah. We all have got so many ways in which we could improve and grow and develop.
I think that's the danger of self-indulgence, which is one of the, like say, the spiritual pitfalls in spiritual life. If you're too self-indulgent, you will not improve. And you kind of, you can never stay at the same point spiritually. Like either you're going backwards or you're going forwards. Like if you're not doing anything, you just remain static. And if you go forward, if you do something, you go forward. But if you don't do anything, you automatically will
start sliding.
You start sliding back. So
and I've got this lovely aphorism here from Sri Chinmoy, which I like. It says, not what you give, not even what you are, but only what you want to become counts in the long run.
That kind of ties into that idea of your future self.
Exactly. And so for me, it's not what I am at the moment. It's not who my current situation. And it's not even what I'm giving to the world at this moment. That's the most valuable thing. It's what I see myself becoming in the future that is the most.
Why do you think is that so valuable?
Because that calls me to continuously grow and become better than I am. And that is the thing that uplifts humanity. That is the thing that lifts the standard of the consciousness and the experience of the world, is each of us becoming a better version of myself.
And also, I think it creates the habits that we need. It creates the healthy habits that each person needs to become. Like you have to have some vision of the future. Otherwise, why would you create a habit? A habit is not something that you enjoy in the moment.
And that's the other interesting thing as well. So I see people get hooked by an idea, like something captures their imagination. And very often we don't even know why it captures our imagination. And so the field that I deal in is ultramarathon runs. And they've become infinitely more popular. So compared to 20 years ago, there was very few people doing 100-mile trail races. They were incredibly challenging and difficult. And so it was a very, very niche field. But in the last 20 years, they've become exponentially more and more popular. And now when you go to Europe or Asia, America, New Zealand, Australia, wherever you are, you'll find these races are selling out and people are spending a lot of time, energy, and money in chasing after this idea of running an ultramarathon.
Yeah, or even a triathlon. Like last week, I tried to register for the Roth Triathlon, which is one of the most famous ones. It was sold out within 30 seconds.
Exactly.
So we missed our slot, unfortunately.
And so when someone becomes interested in one of these events, I think what happens is the inspiration and the interest comes first. It's you see something about it. You see a clip on TV. You see something on social media. You see something on YouTube. And something about it captures you on some much deeper and fundamental level. And then over time, when you start to finally vocalize that, hey, I'd like to do a triathlon, or I'd like to do an ultramarathon, or I'd like to do a high rocks, or whatever it is, one of these something physically difficult and challenging. Then when you start telling other people, you'll start to try and explain it, but you'll explain it in a way that's secondary to the experience. So the experience came first, something about it called to you and made you feel as though this is what you want to do. And when I talk to people, once they've decided that they want to do that and they're starting on that journey, they'll often tell me, well, I want to get fit and I want to get healthy and, I think this will help and I need a goal and I need to be inspired. And I say, yeah, all of those things are true, but that's not what captured you, first of all. It's not like you looked at it and thought to yourself, well, if I became a triathlete, I would have to lose weight and I would become more disciplined.
These are kind of side effects.
Yeah, these are like
our mind kind of fills them in later.
Yeah,
kind
exactly.
of like explaining away why you did the thing in a reasonable, in a logical way.
Exactly. It's trying to logically explain why you had that feeling. But I think the feeling is coming from a deeper part of your being. It's like your soul, or the deeper part of your being is seeing in those people that they have developed qualities that you yourself need to develop. So you see your friend at work and they've done an ultramarathon, and it's not that you also want the medal and the trophy and the t-shirt, but you, on some deeper level, the part of you that can identify with others and expand itself, you see them and you see they've changed in some way. Like there's something different about them. And some deeper part of you recognizes that and says, I need what they have. I need more discipline. I need more commitment.
Peace of mind, satisfaction.
Yeah.
There's a lot of real side effects and benefits to doing these really challenging things.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, running, I feel you develop patience, stamina, endurance. These are all great strategies and qualities for life in general.
Yeah.
And I think that's also what people see. If you really have a habit of training and running, let's say running, it can be swimming, it can be cycling, but anything hard physically, that you automatically develop a lot of these qualities that otherwise are really difficult to develop. Like, how do you develop patience, for instance, or stamina if you don't practice it? Like, you actually have to practice those things in order to develop them. Just want to pause it for 1 second. We'll be right back.
Very good point about developing these positive qualities that we all need more of in our lives. And I think that is one of the reasons why people have started moving and becoming inspired towards these challenging things, because our lives now, we've removed a lot of the difficulties. We've removed a lot of the hardship from our day-to-day life. And so now we need to consciously create hardship again. Mm-hmm. And so if I look at the way my grandfather lived, and his father and his grandfather, their lives were so full of hardship and sacrifice and discipline just to simply get by and survive.
Just to survive, yeah.
If you're working in an agrarian or an agricultural setting, you have no opportunity to simply avoid hardship, because it's
I don't think you saw anyone training for a marathon in those days.
No,
the marathon only started in 1896. So it's a relatively new phenomenon.
Yeah,
if you look at our history.
And so that's an amazing thing, that we've got our society to a level of well-being, and let's not say well-being, we've got to a level of abundance, material abundance, that we can actually avoid. We can almost try and outsource all of the suffering in our lives.
Yeah, it has good sides and bad sides. Like, the good sides is we don't have to worry about those things. The bad sides is that we ourselves are being trapped in living very unhealthy lives. Like, we totally cut out all challenges, then we cut out movement. Obesity is now a problem in many parts of the affluent world. And also, I think, lack of meaning. Like, if you don't have challenges anymore, and we talked about that earlier in our challenges episode, but challenges make you go out into the world and have adventures, and they create so much meaning.
Yeah. So we've got this idea now that we're going to try and do hard things. We're going to take on some challenges, and we've seen someone else do it. We've seen some footage of it. We've seen some clips, and it's resonated with us in some way. And so there's this feeling that we also want to approach doing challenging things. So what I've seen over my 25 years of running is that very often people come into a sport like running, and they have a very open and pure intention, that they're inspired. They want to do this activity. They want to take on these challenges. But what I tend to find and see that happens in people's lives is that society around us, and society, we can't escape society. We're fundamentally part of society, unless we're living in a hermitage far off in the Alps or the Himalayas. But we're not playing that game. We're playing the game of acceptance of life. So we're living in the world. And so the world has, or the society we live in, has its own set of values. It tries to promote a certain way of looking at success and failure. It tries to paint a certain picture of what a good life looks like. And so when we look at sports, Sports is one of those areas where is the society we live in has created almost an ethos around what is valuable and how we should approach doing a sport. And especially in the sport of running, it becomes these very fixed numbers. So if you're doing a marathon, or if you meet another runner, one of the first things you'll say, "Oh, well, what's your time for the marathon? What's your time for the 5K?" And so we reduce all of the complexity and all of the uniqueness of that person down to, "Oh, is he a 2:59 marathoner, or oh, he's a 3:05 marathoner?" They're two radically different sorts of
different
people.
beasts. Yeah,
And
one is really cool, the other one is, all right.
and so it's really hard for people to stop themselves thinking about that, because as I've said before, I think nature abhors a vacuum. So nature will always fill in a vacuum. If we create a vacuum, nature will immediately
So
fill
what do
it.
you mean with the vacuum here?
So you can't exist in a society without having, either you accept society's beliefs and society's way of approaching things, or if you want to have your own, you need to have that really crystal clear as to what you believe. So you can't just say, "Oh, well, I don't believe anything."
Yeah.
And I'll just see what happens.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a vacuum of belief.
No.
Yeah. Some belief will come in, and it may be conscious, but most often maybe it's unconscious.
Yeah. And so when people started running, they wanted to challenge themselves. They wanted to push their own limits, and they wanted to become better, and they wanted to grow. And that collapses down to the idea, "Oh, okay, I either need to run faster times or I need to run further distances." And so most people start with one and then maybe move on to the other. But so there's this idea that you can simplify the process of running down to simply the times that you're doing. And I think when you do this over a long period of time, it's not a sustainable and successful strategy to keep doing difficult things over a long period of time. And that's what we want.
I think also because just as you age, which I've experienced, automatically your times will go down.
Yeah.
And it's really inspiring to go for fast times if they're always increasing.
Yeah.
So that is motivation that kind of keeps on going for a number of years.
Yeah. So
but then once you let off a little bit of steam, or you age, or you think that you're not as fit anymore, your times go up, and that game is kind of over, right?
Yeah.
It's not enjoyable anymore. So you need to find something else.
Exactly. So that's a short-term strategy, and you can do that for a long time still, even though, let's say, it's a short term in the span of your life.
Yeah.
So if you start running in your 20s or your 30s, you might have 10 years, you might have 15 years where you can keep getting faster, you can keep improving your speed. But at some point, you will reach your maximum speed. You'll run the fastest times you're ever going to run. And from there, you're only going to get slower over time. And you can really try and delay that and slow that down. But if your whole running journey was about improving your time, improving your time, improving your time, and unconsciously you took that belief on, because when you came into running, most of the time your goal is not to run a such and such a time. It takes some time inside the sport before you start becoming fixated on, okay, I want to run 15 minutes for 5K, or under 20 minutes for 5K, or whatever is a big challenge for you. But if that is your only way of looking at success, then exactly as you pointed out, you're going to hit a point where you're at your peak running speed, and from there you will slow down. And that's when a lot of people stop running. So it's not then a strategy where you can run right throughout your life. And some of the most inspiring people I know are people who were really fast runners when they were young, but they found a way to pivot away from the obsession with times and performance.
Yeah, for me, like I noticed that happening at some point, like maybe 10 years ago or 5 years ago. I switched sports. So
Yeah.
I became a triathlete. That
Yeah.
worked for me.
Yeah.
So that's a totally different challenge. Now I
Yeah.
have to do two other sports that I've never done before. And I love getting into the details and the nitty-gritty of those sports, like cycling and swimming. And my running has gotten on a totally different meaning now, that it's part of a triathlon. But I do feel now that, yeah, I kind of had to overcome. I did feel at some point just not inspired anymore to run a lot.
Yeah.
So I have gone through that phase, and I think the secret is to find new meaning in running. Like, what is it in running that gives you joy? And just go for a while, just go for the pure experience of running. Maybe not use a watch, and just feel when you're out there in the forest, feel the pure exhilarating feeling of just the movement. And that has come back also.
And that's the right way to look at it. I think that you want to find inherent meaning in doing the activity. And so you want to be able to say, I'm going for a run because I'm going for a run. That is the reason I'm going for a run, because the experience of going for a run has meaning and fulfillment inherent within it without needing to find some justification.
Yeah, that's maybe a nice segue into your experience that you had this weekend when you ran the Swiss Alpine.
Yeah.
You ran, just for the listeners, the Swiss Alpine Marathon takes place every year. It's been away for a few years. It's gone back, and the full distance is 82 kilometers with 4,000 meters of climbing, which is a huge. It's a lot of mountains you have to climb, and yeah, maybe talk us through that, because you wanted to. You had I think you had a chance to place in the top three, and you were one of the elites, and the experience did maybe not go as planned. You ended up seventh place, but you still had a really meaningful experience. So I'd like to hear your take on that race and how that ties into the theme of finding meaning, even though maybe the expectations are not met.
Yeah, and I think that's for me. I'm at that point in my sporting career and in my spiritual life as well, where the intention behind the activity has become far more important than the outer results or the outcome of the activity. And so, in all areas of my life, I'm trying to find ways to align the actions that I'm taking and the way that I'm living my life with my most deeply cherished beliefs or my most deeply cherished truths that I've discovered through my spiritual practices. So I'm trying to align everything that I do with what I truly believe on the most deepest fundamental level.
So what do you believe in the most deepest fundamental level when it comes to running?
So I see running as a great tool to, like you said, develop particular qualities. So patience, perseverance, resilience.
I'm wearing the wrong shirt for today.
Yeah.
For the patience.
So there's a lot of I see a lot of not just physical benefits. Let's say there's obviously physical benefits, but I see it as something much deeper inside me. I see. So okay, there's a much deeper way of looking at running, and I think probably this is as good a time as any to get into this, because I think this is really for me one of the key insights that I want people to take away from this episode. And so there's two ways of looking at doing something like running. So we're going to use running as an example, but you can equally use these same ideas in your relationship. You can use these in your business life, in your career, in your job. You can use this in any area where you're trying to do something that is difficult and challenging. And almost everything on earth, if you try and do it well, is difficult and challenging. So if we look,
yeah, you promised that this ties also into your experience at the Swiss Alpine.
Yes, yeah.
That's something to
So we'll totally get to that. So what we want to look at is we can take any activity as purely just that activity. So like we can say that this was a run in the mountains and the goal was to run the fastest time possible. That is one way of looking at it. And just as if you were a performer of any sort, that you're trying to do a performance and you're trying to do the best possible performance that you can. And in your relationship, you're trying to make the best possible relationship you can. And so there's one way of looking at it is you're doing an activity and you're looking for a particular outcome. And so like we talked about, though, that has its own limitations because it tempts you to try and cut corners. Because if you think that the outcome is more important than the process and the experiences that you have along the way, you'll be willing to make deals with the devil, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
You can cut corners here and there, but you can justify it because say, well, look, I got a good outcome.
Yeah.
And so that for me then is a dangerous way of looking at the world, because
I think in professional sports this happens a lot.
Yeah, there's a really strong temptation, because when we overvalue the result, that's what happens, is that we tend to then make decisions that will maximize the result, but we won't be paying attention to how we got that result. What was the experiences? And if you look at your business, you could do that in the short term. You could, try and raise your prices, give worse service, perhaps. You can try and cut corners here, there, and everywhere. And in the short term, you might be really successful in maximizing your profits. But in the long term, there's going to be a price that you're going to have to pay for that. And it's the same in sports. If you're overly obsessed or focused on the outcome, you perhaps will take shortcuts to get to that outcome, and you won't pay attention to how you carried yourself across the course.
Now I'm reminded of what Krishna said in the Bhagavad Gita. You have the right to action, but not to the fruit thereof.
Yes, exactly. And what that brings us back to is, if you can find a way to do all of the hard things in your life in a way that really resonates with you and really resonates with the deepest part of your being and expresses the deepest spiritual qualities that you embody, then that activity becomes deeply meaningful and significant, regardless of what the results are. And then also it becomes something that you can carry on doing right throughout the span of your life, because it's no longer, oh, well, my times are slowing down, so I'm not going to compete anymore because I don't want to see my time slowing down. Instead, the activity itself becomes a venue for you to practice the states of being that you really see as valuable. And what I like to see is that you can look at running as a sport, or you can look at it as a performance, as you would in a dramatic performance or a dancer. And so if you see someone who dances really well, and they do a performance, or a musician, or
An actor.
an actor on the stage, they're not looking for some particular outcome at the end to say it was a successful. It's not that they look at the box office and say, oh, well, we sold 100,000 tickets, so that was a really wonderfully successful.
Even though I performed horribly.
Yeah. So what I try and see is that running for me is now a performance as part of my life, as part of the divine Leela, the divine play. And it becomes a stage on which I can step onto, and I can try and act out the highest ideals that I have within me from my spiritual life. And I can try and act them out in this bounded space. So there's a game going on, and I can see the result at the end, but the result at the end doesn't even tell me much about the experience. And so we'll look at the race I had on the weekend. And so I've been coming up to Europe and racing in the mountains for many years, and I've had really great results. I've won races, I've been on the podium a lot. And the interesting thing is, when I look back in my career, it's not the moments where I won that are the defining moments. And that's really interesting for people, because I think people will naturally think that your best performances are the ones where you won the race, or you had your fastest time, or you were up with the best possible runners you could run with. And that's not the case for me at all. My favorite experiences as an athlete are moments where I showed true character, when I revealed something about myself that I hoped it was true, that I wanted to be true, but I needed the opportunity to act it out.
And were there some moments in this race that you did on the weekend?
So there was definitely some moments in this race. Like, I'll start with, probably for me, my most significant experience as a runner was at the same race on a much different course, a course that was much more suited for me as an athlete. And this was back in, must have been 2014, I think. And it was the same sort of distance. It was 78 kilometers, and it was my first time that I ever took the lead at a big race in Europe. And so it was on an outer sense, on a results-based sense, we're looking at it in that way. This was one of my best. It was looking like one of my best ever performances. So I took the lead, and the guy that I took the lead from was the current world 100-kilometer champion. And so he was a legendary runner and great runner in his own right, and he'd won this race for like 5 or 6 years in a row. And so I overtook him, and then started up the biggest climb of the day. It climbed up to 2,700 meters over a high mountain pass called the Sertig Pass. And at the top of the pass, I actually had a 5-minute lead on him, which I didn't know at the time.
Yeah.
But I was just so overjoyed with this experience I was having. It was beyond my wildest dreams to be leading this race. And there was 20 kilometers to go, and I was running down through the rocks. It was a very technical, rocky, alpine descent. And I was concentrating as hard as I could to make it through there without having any issues or any problems. And just as we were about to leave the rocky technical area, I looked up and I saw this dirt road in front of me. And I thought to myself, I remember thinking, oh my God, yes, I've made it through the most dangerous part of the course. And just at that moment, I tripped on a rock. And I was going full speed, and I flew through the air, and I still remember flying through the air, and I came down and I landed on my side on my elbow. And because I landed right on my elbow, I actually cracked 2 ribs. So I broke 2 ribs here. And I was winded. And at the same moment, my calves both cramped. So I was lying there in the dust and I was like looking up at the sky and my calves were cramping. And it was such a huge impact. And so I was really disorientated for a few moments. And so I finally got up and I started moving and I was hobbling along.
Wow,
And
it's almost like that moment where you saw the distance ahead.
yeah,
It was like the last
I was what
test or
I
something.
wasn't in the moment. I had taken myself out of the moment and I was putting myself somewhere in the future.
Yeah.
And suddenly my awareness was not where it needed to be. And so I got up and I started hobbling along and I was really struggling to move. And at some point, the gentleman behind me came flying past and there was no way I could catch him. And I always wanted to believe that I was someone who, when things got difficult, when things became really when the night was darkest, that I would rise to the occasion, that I would bring the best of myself into the game and try and give myself fully, even despite the difficulties, despite things not having gone to plan. And there was something I always intuitively felt that I had within me. But there's very few opportunities to actually really
Yeah.
know that.
It's not that comes to the fore when you're doing your groceries and like there's something not missing in the shelf.
No,
Missing in the shelf, and you're like, wow, what a difficult moment. Let me bring to the fore the best in me.
and so one of the meanings of my name Vajin is heroic. And so there's something about this heroic self-sacrifice, like of really willing to give like yourself fully to the experience to have the best possible chance of success, or just to heroically give yourself to something. So being fully committed to whatever it is. And our lives don't have opportunities to be fully committed to what we're doing. I mean, most of the time we get through our lives giving 50%, 40%, 20%. It depends what we're doing. But a lot of us realize that we're not ever really called to give ourselves the best of ourselves to a particular experience. And so what I did was 10 kilometers to go, I really decided, right, I'm going to give absolutely everything to try and get to the finish line as quickly as possible. Like, I don't care what happens. I don't care the result at the end. All I want to do is try and finish this race with as much speed and power as I can develop and I can offer. And so that's what I did. The last 10 Ks, I probably never run as hard effort wise. And so I couldn't run full speed.
Yeah, of course, you're in pain.
Yeah, I was in pain and like my body was a little bit, imbalanced and things weren't working properly. But my effort, I was giving absolutely everything I had to get to the finish line and in the best possible position. And when I look back on the race, so I managed to hold on to second position, so no one else passed me. And so outwardly, it was a great result. But what's inspiring for me is not the result. Like the result it's neither here nor there. But for me was that moment when I was really called, when I was really tested, because I came to the aid station and my friends were there crewing for me and they could see I was covered with dust and dirt and I had abrasions on my body and they could see that I was injured. I could have easily said, oh, what a shame. I had a bad fall and, I'm going to have to drop out of the race now. And so I had that choice. It was like right in front of me, but I said, no, I'm going to absolutely give everything I can to this experience and to try and close it out as well as I can. And so for me, that's one of my performances I'm most proud of, not because I won the race or, even that I was on the podium, but because I was really tested and called and that I actually rose to the occasion on that moment.
Yeah.
And so I learned something about myself in that moment that is much, much more valuable than if I ran well to the finish and I'd come first or I'd come second. I perhaps wouldn't have learned anything.
Right. Outwardly, people would appreciate that more, would admire that result more. But inwardly, like this is a much better result for you.
Yeah.
Like here you were called upon and to go deep within and bring out the best you had to offer. And those opportunities are very rare.
Exactly.
So I think even the universe engineered that for you. That you had to actually fall. It was a good thing.
Yeah.
It's a blessing in disguise because that's when you could show your heroic nature, your quality, your divine qualities. Yeah, it's a beautiful story.
Yeah, it was definitely not easy to sleep for the next month with 2 broken ribs.
Yeah.
But I was happy.
Did you never go
price.
back and think like, I wish I didn't fall and just took first place?
No, the amazing thing was because the experience was so powerful because it really revealed and reinforced something that I valued far more than the result. And so it's like when you are on the stage as an actor, you know when you're giving your best performance, and you know when you're really expressing the character in the way the character should be expressed. And then you don't need outer validation after that. When you perform on a musical instrument, or you perform a dance, when you're doing something, and so in that moment I was seeing the sport as an art rather than a sport. So I was seeing running as an art form. It was an opportunity for me to be on the stage and to dance through the mountains and to express myself in the way that felt most authentic to me. And in that moment, getting up after having a serious fall and being seriously injured, but still choosing to push on to the finish with everything I had, that really resonated with me on some much deeper level. And that was far more satisfying, fulfilling than the result was.
Yeah, exactly. And do you have any experiences of that in this race that you just did?
Yeah, so each race, I value the race for the experiences that I have out there. And so I think that's difficult for people to understand sometimes, where they look at the times, they look at the placings, and especially as an outside observer, all you see is the times and the placings. So
exactly.
So that's all the information you have to go off, and so you'll think to yourself, oh, that was a good performance, or that wasn't a good performance. But you have no idea the subjective experiences that the player on the stage of life, actually went through to get to the finish line. And so I put less and less attachment and less meaning on the results now. And more I'm looking for particular types of moments and experiences out there on the course, because those are the things that I really realize that are valuable for me in the long run. And I think the biggest thing that I'm looking for when I go into a difficult event now is that moment of being fully committed to the experience, where
being fully present.
Everything else ceases to exist. All that matters is the moment that you're in.
It's a meditative experience.
Exactly. And that moment is so precious to me that I will continue to turn up to races to have those types of experiences, because the race environment is set up where it makes it possible for you to give yourself completely to the event, because someone else has done the course marking, someone else is taking care of the food and the logistics, and there's support out there. So if you go in over your head, that you're still going to have someone who's going to manage to drag you off the course and get you back to the village. So there's kind of some safety net, so you can really give yourself, you can go all in on the race. And there's always, in every single race, whether you're running your first park run through to doing your first ultramarathon, there comes a time where some part of you, there's a question that's asked, and the question is, how badly do you want this? Like, how much do you really want this experience? And you internally know when you said, yes, I am here for this, and I'm going to give myself fully to this, and I'm going to push on all the way to the finish. Or there's that little voice that says, like, no one will know. Like, just back off.
Back off.
Just slow down.
It's such a recognizable.
It doesn't matter. No one will know. And what I'm interested in turning up to events for is to play the game of facing that voice and continuing to choose, yes, I'm willing to make the sacrifices to get to have this experience and to go all in on this.
I'm not choosing the easy way out.
And so in this race, it was a really challenging course, like really brutal, big alpine climbs. It got really hot. The top runners, we all ran out of water because there was an aid station missing on the course. And so there was a lot of things that would have provided opportunities for me to say, look, it doesn't matter. Like, I'll just stop now. I'll just walk away. And especially when you run out of water and you get dehydrated, there's a health hazard there as well. And so I remember getting to this aid station at 55 kilometers. It was in the middle of the day, incredibly hot, incredibly exposed. And I'd run out of water for about 45 minutes. Before that, I was feeling quite dizzy and quite unwell. And so there's some part of you that feels like, is it really worth it?
Yeah.
Is it worth it to continue on? There's a ski lift that I could just get on, and it will take me back to the village, and I could be back before, by lunchtime.
Yeah.
And so it's these moments of putting yourself in a situation where you're facing real decisions and real consequences. And to be in that situation and to continue to choose to act in a way that you feel is the right way to act out this character. And on some level, I know this character is not even real. Like, this character that I'm playing is also just a creation.
But it has some reality to it.
And so,
And it can
yes,
inspire other people, and it can experience joy and meaning.
there is something to it. And this, like, you know, when you act in a way that you're proud of, and you know when you sell yourself short, when you've done something that goes against who you fundamentally choosing to be. And so that's what these events provide for you, is the opportunity to actually to act it out on a stage. And it's really funny because for me, the stage is this vast, open, epic mountains. And for me, it's just wild and heroic up there. And, you know, I love...
It's beautiful. We were there to crew for you at the 66K mark.
Yeah.
And we saw you come in, and you looked great. I mean, you were cheerful, even though you were like maybe, you know, half an hour behind your schedule or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was an amazing view up there. And I can totally see how you can be, you know, totally transported into this meditative state, just running for the pure joy, for the sheer joy of the experience.
And one of the best things, like for me now, I see actually there's more and more value in still continuing on when things don't go well, because that is so much more reflective of how your life will turn out in the long run.
That's a great strategy for life. I mean, in life, many times things don't go as you hoped they would go, or you expected they would go, and then you need some strategy to push on. You can't just say, okay, I'm quitting, you know?
That's the thing. Life does not have an aid station where you can sit down on a chair and just give up.
Exactly.
It's always, you're always being called to step forward and continue on with the journey. And like you said, after I got through that point at 55Ks, I knew that it wasn't a day for me to have a great performance, but there was the opportunity for me to act out something much more valuable, which is that willingness to cheerfully continue to march forward with poise and dignity. And it takes me to that Japanese quality that we've talked about before, which is called Gaman, which is one of the foundational qualities that the Japanese
remind us again what that
celebrates. And it's to endure seemingly unbearable suffering with poise and dignity.
Good one.
And so this provides me an opportunity to actually act that out. You can be in real physical discomfort. Your legs can be shot. You can be too hot. You can be feeling like the sun is, you know, is frying you to a crisp out there. But you can choose to cheerfully march forward and run as much as you can. And also the way you interact with the other runners on the course. And I'm not sure if you noticed, but after the race, so many of the other runners that I had run with and shared times on the course, they came over and we had really nice conversations and moments together. Because for me, a big part of being out there and doing hard things is doing it with poise and dignity, and doing it in a way that really values all of the other people around you. So I don't see them as my competitors, and I'm not trying to defeat them. I'm trying to call out the best in them as they're calling out the best in me. They're inspiring me, and I'm hoping to offer my goodwill and my encouragement. And so if you heard some of the conversations that we're having out there, they're so amicable and so friendly, and there's such a sense of oneness and
you don't get that easily with a 10K or even marathon. You know, everybody's kind of in his own lane, pushing as hard as they can, and when you finish, you just want to shower and go home and just like hang up the medal, tick off the box.
That tick done.
But
in these races, I find that so wonderful that there's a real comradeship, because there is such a shared difficulty and suffering. That we're all so thrilled just to get to the finish line.
I remember doing my first ultramarathon, which was our 47-mile run that we do in New York with our spiritual community every August. We celebrate Sri Chinmoy's birthday with this 47-mile run. He inaugurated that when he himself turned 47. And it's a really amazing run because, first of all, it starts at midnight. So we're all lined up at the start at midnight. We sing a spiritual song, the invocation, to start all together. And then we just start running through the night. And it's a course that is, I think it's a mile, or it's like a little bit less than a mile now. It's like a K long. It's not a really, it's a pretty difficult course. It goes up and down. It's around a school. And when I did it, we also had a 400-meter track in the middle, and it was all lit with candles. And it was just a magical experience. And I remember I ran it with you. And you actually broke the course record that day. And we ran together for the first 42K for the marathon distance. And then you kind of pulled away. And I was on my own then. And I just remember running there and being so present in the moment. And my feet were really hurting. It was like I'd never run beyond the marathon before. So every step, it was just a flash of pain on the soles of my feet. And I just had to, like you said, I just had to push through, accept it, and run with poise and dignity. And I kind of
Yeah.
managed to do that. And at some point, I just started crying. I just was so emotionally overwhelmed by the beauty of it all. It's just like that moment where there's physical pain, but there's also the beauty of the silent night, just the run itself, and all these other runners out there being very silent and quiet, and this camaraderie. Yeah, it was one of the most beautiful running experiences that I've had. And I remember you finishing, and a lot of joy was there. It was like 5 in the morning,
Yeah.
and I came in a little later, and yeah, it was really a magical experience. I will never forget that.
Yeah. Yeah. I also, it
Yeah,
definitely was a magical night that
yeah,
night.
yeah,
So, what I think that you can see from the things we're talking about here is it is possible inside these events to find the opportunity to actually put yourself in a situation of real difficulty and real physical hardship, but then reveal to yourself that there's actually more to you than you perhaps knew, or perhaps you hoped there was that depth to you. It's like stepping into the unknown. It's like
yeah,
stepping off the cliff or stepping into the abyss,
yeah,
and you're not sure what's going to happen. But it's having that faith. And I think we've talked about it in the self-transcendence episode as well, that it's these moments of self-transcendence where you really start to have a deep faith that there is far more to your being than what perhaps the world around you sees and perhaps would tell you.
yeah. And these are opportunities for it to come to the fore,
Yeah.
like these races and hard things that we do.
Yeah.
And that's why I think also they're so popular nowadays. Like people
Yeah.
go into this, masses of people go and run a marathon or do a
Yeah.
triathlon or do something really hard, because yeah, that's maybe the only way for those really deep levels of our being to come to the fore. I mean, apart from having a deep spiritual experience, like
Yeah.
a really deep meditation, where you can also experience these deeper levels. But that's a different experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I try and inspire my athletes as well that I coach. I try and tell them, when you go into a big race, there's two forms of success. There's having a particular external goals that you can chase after, so a particular time, but there's also the way you carry yourself around the course. And if you can maintain your poise and dignity, if you can be a force and a voice for good out there on the course. And I'm often so proud of the athletes that I coach when I talk to them after the race and they tell me some of their interactions with the other competitors and the way that they carried themselves out there. Often I see that as so much more valuable than whether the race went perfectly and they hit all their splits and they achieved this particular outcome. For me, that's a momentary success, but learning to carry yourself through the world and through the difficulties of it in a way that you can look back on and be proud of the person you were. Because I can give an example that sometimes in races, you'll see someone coming into the aid station and they're really angry and they're really upset and they're frustrated and they're shouting at the aid station crew. And I always feel like these people are volunteers.
Yeah.
They're giving up their time and
Yeah.
energy to be there to help the runners.
Yeah.
And if you can't stop and thank them for what they're doing and appreciate the sacrifices they've made to be there to help you, it shows that you're too caught up with the chasing that particular goal.
I've been there.
Yeah.
I know that state of mind when you're really like you're absolutely giving everything and you're in
Yeah.
this fast race
Yeah.
and like something goes wrong. You're just in that, your
Yeah.
mind just go away.
Yeah, and then
some part of you comes to the fore that you normally would never,
yeah,
in normal life would never
it's
reveal.
almost shocking, and that's when you've made the external goal more important. You've put more value in
Yeah.
the time
Yeah.
than how you got there.
Yeah.
And so, and I think that's, you look back on those, and even if you achieve the goal, I think there's some part of you that regrets the way you went about
Exactly.
pursuing it.
Yeah, exactly. And what we talked about, it just reminds me of this slogan that Sri Chinmoy used to have about running, which became, a very
Yeah.
well quoted slogan.
Oh, yes.
It's run and become and run. So it's interesting. Maybe I read out something because there's a question like, what
Yeah.
does that slogan mean?
Yeah.
And Sri Chinmoy answers. So it's run and become and run. So Sri Chinmoy says, if we run, we see our capacities becoming fully manifested. Previously, our capacities were dormant. They didn't function inside us. But when we run, we bring to the fore our hidden capacities and are able to do something and become something. But once we have become something, that is not the end. Still, we have to go forward because we are eternal pilgrims. Everything in us is transcending. It is like a child. To learn the alphabet is his first goal. He studies and learns it. But will he then give up? No. His second goal is to go to school. Then he wants to go to college. A runner brings forward his capacity and becomes something. Then he looks around and sees some champion runners, and he gets the inspiration to try to become an excellent runner like they are. Perhaps he will one day excel and go beyond them. So there are always higher goals, even after we have become something. Once we reach our first goal, we have to run towards a higher goal. Yeah, so that's the whole idea I think we've been talking about.
Yeah.
How running puts to the fore this transcendence in us.
Yeah. So that's a really nice encapsulation of this whole idea. That, and I think, like, for me as well, like there's kind of two parts of that. So there's run and become, and in some ways that might be the first part of our running journey.
Yeah.
Where we're starting and we're improving our speed, we're improving our distance. So we're trying to become something.
Yeah.
But then once we've become something, there's still another aspect. It's like when you've reached that peak of your running career, you don't just stop.
Yeah.
You don't just give up. You
Right.
still continue to run, but you find a deeper purpose and meaning.
then you become, and then you run.
Yeah.
And I think many professional athletes make that mistake. So their
Yeah.
career is over. You know, they will never get the same results. And then
Yeah.
very often they fall into this black hole.
Yeah.
And they become depressed. They lose their meaning in their life because all of a sudden everything that they once were admired for and appreciated for
Yeah.
is gone.
Yeah.
But they could easily go on and, you know, use the experience that they've gained and
Yeah.
then just run for, you know, for what we've been talking about, to manifest their qualities, to be
Yeah.
a good person, to have these wonderful other experiences that is not tied into running a fast time.
Yeah.
And so it's wonderful, these two parts, run and become. You
Yeah.
start with running, you become somebody, you become experienced, and you learn all these things, you manifest the qualities, and then it's almost like the process is reversed.
Yeah.
And by running, you manifest these qualities and get all these, wonderful experience and learn and become a deeper, more layered human being through the process.
Yeah. And it teaches us, I think, if you go through the whole journey teaches you humility.
Mm.
If you stop at halfway,
Yeah.
you don't get the learnings that
You
come
get a lot
from
of
the
pride.
Yeah, you get all this pride, and then you've got nothing to do with it. It just stops there.
Yeah.
And
That's why you get these guys who say, "Oh, you know, when I was in my 20s, I used to run."
Yeah, you're left with this huge burden of pride to carry around with you for the rest of your life. Whereas if you follow the journey all the way through, like one of my good friends who's based here in Europe, he's a British mountain runner. He was one of the best uphill mountain runners in the world for many, many years through the 90s and into the 2000s. And then now he's in his 50s, and now he is running 100-mile races, and he's no longer competitive. He's no longer a fast runner, you would say. But he's strong, and he will get out there and he will do these courses, these really hard courses. And he's now finding a completely different sort of experience that he's not battling for positions or time. He's out there purely for the adventure and the experience. And I think on some deep level, it allows him to express some part of him that needs to be expressed.
Yeah.
And very often it's parts of us where we don't have a way of expressing them in any other form.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a really good example from an adjacent field. So it's in the field of mountaineering. One of my favorite mountaineers of all time. As most people do, we have
your favorite.
We have our top five. But Reinhold Messner from Italy, he was from the Dolomites, and he was the first person to climb Everest without any oxygen. He was the first person to climb all the 8,000-meter peaks. Just this legendary character in the mountaineering world. And I watched a documentary about him, and hearing him how he approached climbing was so interesting because he approached it as an art form rather than a sport. So most people would see it as a sport. So the aim of the sport is to reach the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
And he very often, because there's a saying in mountaineering that there's old climbers and there's bold climbers, but there's no old and bold climbers. Because if you don't let go of your arrogance and your pride, your youthful arrogance and pride, you won't become an old climber.
Yeah.
You'll become a dead climber.
Yeah.
And so he was one who was famous for being willing to turn back. Because in mountaineering, you can imagine if you've been climbing up this peak and you're getting so close to the top, and then the weather's turning, and then things are not looking good. If you are too attached to the result of reaching the summit, you will find yourself in situations where you'll push on and you'll perhaps die because of that. And so he was the first one to climb all the 8,000-meter peaks. There's 14 of them. And he managed that because he was always willing to turn back, because he saw that this was not, reaching the top was not the only goal in mountaineering. And one of the things that really struck me was I saw him talking about why he started solo climbing. So he climbed a lot of these big peaks completely by himself. And why he said he did that was he realized that was when he climbed with someone else, you could split the fear between the two of you. So you would be somewhat afraid, I would be somewhat afraid, but you would take some responsibilities and I would take some responsibility.
Yeah.
And so we would divide the fear that you have to face to climb in these
And
big
that may not be
mountains.
a good risk, safety wise.
Yeah, so what it does is if you climb by yourself, you have to take all of the fear yourself. And why he chose to climb solo was because of that. He wanted to have the entire responsibility on himself to make good decisions.
Yeah.
And when he looked at a mountain face, he would see the route he wanted to climb, and he would almost see it like a painter would see like a line of paint on a canvas. And even when he had come down the mountain, he could look back and he could look and see the line that he had climbed on the mountain. And so I was saying, wow, he's looking through the eyes of an artist.
Yeah.
And people would think, oh, you're a sportsman, you're in the mountains, you're doing, but it's like the way he approached it was like an artist, trying to create the most beautiful work of art. But for him, the work of art was this line that he climbed up the side of a mountain. So his canvas was, an 8,000-meter peak.
Yeah.
And I found that, wow, what a beautiful thing. And that's why he climbed throughout his entire life. He never gave up. He never retired. And he still has an absolute love of the mountains because he approached them in a way that it's a way that is transcendent. It transcends your performance level. It transcends, this one particular goal. It's something you can continue to do throughout your life.
There's another famous climber, Uli Steck,
Yes.
Swiss guy, who did not become an old climber, right?
Yeah.
And so he passed away recently.
Yeah, it was probably like 5 or 6 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Man.
Yeah. But what was his, like, did he make
So he was all about speed climbing.
Right.
So he was about like setting records and climbing as fast as possible. And he was trying to push his limits purely in that physical performance space.
Yeah.
And that's the danger with that game, that it is a game of high risk and high reward. But there's, especially in a game where there's really high consequences like alpinism and mountaineering, it's a very dangerous place to take to take that mindset. And I think at some point he would have found his peace with needing to chase after that goals. And I think it was a beautiful thing to see with someone like Reinhold Messner, is you really see now he really has found his peace with the mountains and he doesn't have anything to prove. And now he's put all his time and effort into making these beautiful mountain museums in Italy, which you can visit and learn about and see these beautiful things. So it's not an unheard of idea, but I don't think it's ever talked about as a way of approaching the sport. As a way of approaching any sport, but like really seeing it as one of the stages, like your life being the divine Leela, the divine play, but taking this as like a play within the play, and choosing to try and act out your own best qualities and your own highest ideals in that field, and finding meaning and joy through doing that rather than finding meaning and joy only through the results.
Yeah, there's definitely meaning and joy from the results.
Yeah.
I have been in that game for some time and I did get joy if I had good results. Like there is joy there.
Exactly.
There's like a feeling of accomplishment. It's like the cherry on the pie. You've been training for some time. You do the race, you have a good result. It's like, feels good.
Yeah.
But it's not a joy. It's a joy that also disappears pretty quickly again.
Yeah.
And if you're not in it for the long run and there's no like slow dopamine underneath, there's not like continuous joy just from the training. Yeah. I think that's not sustainable for the long run. And I remember my fastest marathon was here in Amsterdam. And that was my only marathon where I did not have any suffering physically during the whole race. Yeah. So that was quite special. I feel like some divine grace was coming down for that particular day. And I had like the perfect race. Like every runner says, like you have a few, maybe one or two, you have perfect races. And that was for me was the perfect race. Everything went smooth. Everything went as planned. And I had a fantastic result. My father was with me for the last like 10K. And he was actually with me for the whole race on the bike. He was behind me. And then I remember the last 10 or 8K, I was by myself. I had been running in a group before, and the guys kind of dropped off one by one, and I was still running by myself at the end. And my dad was behind me on the bike, and he was like, I felt he was so proud of me
Yeah.
for me running there. And he was saying, "Oh, you're doing great." You know, he's saying my name, and he's saying how great I looked. And every time I could feel like a burst of energy from him literally going into my body and like helping me in these last 8Ks. And he was actually happier than me when I had crossed the finish line. He was jumping up like a little boy, like, oh, he was so happy and so proud. Because he himself had been a marathon runner, and he'd started really late in his life. He was a chain smoker, and then he decided to stop smoking, and then from one day to the next he started running just to kind of get something to help him with the withdrawal symptoms, I guess, of the smoking. And he started running. And he was quite talented, and he did run a sub 3 hour marathon. And but I think through me, he kind of felt he made that extra step. And so that day I did 2:27, which was my best marathon result. Yeah, but my dad was definitely the happiest person. That's such a meaning. That was really also a very meaningful moment when I saw my dad there, and also my mother and my sister were in the stadium when I finished. And, they saw me finish and they were so overjoyed. And oh man, it's just like sometimes when a race goes that well, it's just like it's so satisfying. And it's like when I look back at it, it's one of the best memories I have, when everything just went perfectly.
Yeah, and that touches on another aspect I think that we can use as a spiritual approach to running, and that's expanding the experience to include the people around us. And I think for most people, when you're trying to train hard for a difficult goal, you have support from people around you, whether it's your partner, whether it's your family, whether it's your friends, and trying to actually expand the experience to include all of those people around you. It doesn't diminish your joy; it massively increases your joy.
100%, 100%.
And so when I talk to my athletes, especially those with families, I always say you need to bring your family members along on this journey with you. Because if it's you being out there doing all the training and they are making all these sacrifices for you to be away from the family and doing these things, it's not fair on them unless you bring them along on the journey. Because you doing a hard thing, you're acting out something really valuable. You're acting out something that they will learn from, and they will gain something from your journey, even just by partaking as supporters and loved ones and friends. And so I always encourage my athletes, like, have a good talk with your partner or your family to say, this is my goal. This is really meaningful and important to me because it's going to help me grow and challenge me, and it's going to help me step into the best version of myself. But I want to bring everyone along with me. Like, I need your support, and take them on that journey and include them on that journey. And I think then it becomes something much more powerful than just your own experience. It becomes an experience where they all see the power of self-transcendence. They see the power of discipline and commitment over a long period of time. And so it's a really great way to expand on these good experiences.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the mountaineers. You share the fear if you're with the group, but also you share the joy. The joy multiplies, and it becomes more meaningful that way.
So we've created a bit of a picture now that in doing hard things like running, that there's two ways to approach them. We can approach them purely as a sporting event where we're trying to aim for a particular outcome. And for a period of your life, this seems the right way to do it.
Yeah.
And then we've got another model where we're saying, no, running is not just running. Running is a stage for you to go and perform and act out the character that you're embodying in a way that feels most meaningful to you. So you can go out there, you can be brave, you can be heroic, you can be courageous, you can be supportive and loving to the other runners around you.
Patient, you can be enduring, you can be having stamina, you can endure suffering with nobility.
Yes,
all these things.
So it's an amazing place to play around with your character in a challenging environment. Not just, you're not playing the game at a low level. You're playing the game at the highest possible level you can play it at. And I think that's really an interesting thing, because there's a lot of people who would say, "Oh, I'm not interested in competition. I'm not interested in, I'm really spiritual person, so I don't need competition or these types of things."
Yeah.
And I heard someone make it a great comment that it's very easy for you as a monk to think you've conquered your ego and your competition, your competitive spirit, until you find yourself, hiking up a hill next to some other senior monks. And then suddenly there's this urge to get there before them.
Yeah,
It's like,
the
wow,
competitive spirit.
where did that come from? So if you don't put yourself in situations where both the highest and also the lowest parts of yourself can come to the fore, where your own fears and doubts and worries, they will also be present and come to the fore.
Yeah, and I think that competition is not anti-spiritual. Like that's a
No.
misconception that people have. Like if you're spiritual, oh, why do you do races? Like
Yeah.
why would you compete? Why is there prizes at our races? Why
Yeah.
do you encourage people to become first, second, third?
Yeah.
But it's just that the competition element brings out the best in yourself.
Yeah.
If it's just a run and everybody runs for themselves, that's great. I mean,
Yeah.
nothing against that. But there's an extra element if there's competition, that you bring out the very best of yourself,
Yeah.
that only on race day comes to the fore.
Yeah.
So I've experienced that many times. That when you're training, you're having a great training, but there's on race day, there's always something extra that you can pull out of the bag. And I
Yeah.
think that's just the element of competition. Everybody's bringing their best game to the event. You're really there with the intention, I'm going to do the best I ever can. And I'm giving everything.
Yeah.
And
And I think for a lot of people, it's what brings out the best, but also brings out the worst of them.
true.
So
Yeah.
really, that you can, like, because I always find that there's an inverse relationship between how far away the event is and how confident someone is.
Oh, yeah.
So like 3 months out, people are unbelievable. Oh, I'm going to train amazingly well. I'm going to do this amazing performance. You ask them 1 week before, I think my Achilles is a little bit
Yeah.
sore and I didn't sleep well last night. Suddenly all of their doubts and fears
Yeah.
come to the fore.
Yeah.
And so it's an amazing space to actually face up to your own, those parts of your being, the doubt, the fear, the worries, the anxieties.
Yeah.
But then, so that you've got those around the race, and normally when the race starts, you can kind of let those go and put them aside. They take the back seat, and you can really start giving yourself fully. But then the dark, the voice that comes from deep inside, the dark voice, and it's the voice, like now I see it as the voice of betrayal, and it's the voice that's asking you to betray yourself. And that's the voice that's trying to make the deal with you. Say, hey, it doesn't matter. Like, no one cares. If you slow down, like, no one will know. It won't matter. And it's in that moment of, at some point in the race, and I often see that often people can be on track for their goals. Like, you might be going for a sub 3 hour marathon and you get to 32K and you're actually on track to go sub 3 hours. And then this voice starts coming to you. Does it really matter? Do you really need to do it? And it's like, who is trying to betray me in this way?
Right.
Like, I've trained for all these months. I've given so much to this goal. And then at the last moment, it's like this dark voice. And it seems to be your friend. It tries to convince you that, hey, I'm on your side. I just don't want you to suffer.
Yeah.
Just give up. Just slow down. And so I think it's so interesting that you need to find yourself in a place where there is the choice. There is the choice of giving up and betraying yourself in some way, or there is the choice to take the path of the hero and to do what you really set your heart on,
And just as a disclaimer, we're not encouraging people to run through injuries, or if something really breaks down, that then there's good reason to stop at those moments.
But most people know they slow down first because of that voice inside of them rather than their body.
Yeah.
It's like you just can't deal with the intensity of the experience. And you're just like, it's too much. It's too much.
And I think also these things are great. They're actually practice for real life, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole meaning of sports, why it's such a great strategy for life, because you're practicing hardship. You're practicing enduring hardship, and you're practicing enduring suffering and kind of being okay with it.
Yeah.
Especially in those very intense moments when the going gets tough.
Yeah.
The tough gets going. And you're just in such pain and in such discomfort. And then to maintain poise and dignity, to practice Gaman in those moments. And that's going to help you throughout all your life.
Yeah.
I've read this book about all those mountaineers who climbed the north face of the Eiger, which is considered the most dangerous climbing route maybe in the world or in Europe.
Yeah.
And you know, that guy said, once I climbed the north face of the Eiger, I could deal with anything in my life.
Yeah.
Like nothing became difficult anymore. You just think back of that experience when you're there on the mountain face
Yeah.
with terrible conditions, the
Yeah.
wind is blowing, your hands are free. Maybe you lost a glove or there's some real hardship, but you made it through. And you think, "Oh, if I manage that," or you're in the last 10K of the marathon, like everything hurts, you're losing your strength, but the finish line still seems so far away, but you're just pushing on.
I like to talk about the willingness to endure the intensity of the experience. And we often put it in terms of pain and suffering. But like I said at the beginning,
Wasn't there a beautiful aphorism that you had by Sri Chinmoy about this one?
yes. So this is an aphorism that I really like, and it's your body was not meant to saunter down lethargy lane. Your body was meant to challenge death to a constant duel.
No.
And so I think that experience is this experience we're talking about, where you are challenging, your body is challenging its limitations. It's challenging all the lethargy and all of the parts of your physical that are trying to hold you back, and you have to push on through. And I always think that if you can try and change your relationship with that experience, and think of it, instead of thinking of pain and suffering, think of how much intensity can you experience? Like how much in that moment, because you feel so alive in that moment as well. It's you feel the closest to death, but you also feel the most alive in that moment.
Yeah, it's so intense. Like the intensity is almost unbearable.
And so, yeah, it's like the intensity has been turned up and turned up and turned up. And it's a willingness to endure that experience that will get you to the finish line as quickly as possible.
And it will give you the best feeling afterwards.
Yes.
I remember when I had a period when I wasn't running for some time and I did my first race again. And it was so hard. And I remember I just pushed through. My time was not good at all. But I felt so proud after the race. It's like, yeah, I just went for it and really suffered through it.
Yeah.
And if you say yes to that, then I think the reward is there at the end. There's some part of your being that just is so happy when you've gone
Yeah.
through that. You get this flood of joy or this flood of
It's also a
delight.
place you can experience the acceptance of life in the most powerful way,
Yeah.
because in those experiences, if you can truly accept and embrace the experience you're having, it's like the acceptance of life for the transformation of life. I think the more you can accept it, the more it transforms from negative to positive. You can say it goes from pain to joy.
Yeah.
Because at some point when you stay in that space and you keep accepting, it does transform. It's no longer like when you're
It's not unbearable anymore. You think like that is totally unbearable.
Yeah.
I cannot be here anymore.
Yeah.
But you actually can.
And it's always interesting because we always imagine things are gonna like if things are getting worse like this, you always imagine that the curve is going to continue to go in a straight line.
Yeah.
And so, for example, in my race in Switzerland on the weekend, at 35 kilometers, I came down a really steep mountain descent, and my quads were totally trashed by the bottom. And then we were just about to start a 12-kilometer climb in the hottest part of the day on some of the steepest terrain, and you've just crashed down this really steep descent to this aid station. And some part of you thinks, oh my God, I feel so bad right now. How am I going to carry on running for another 50 kilometers in this situation? But you do. You just start going up the next hill and things change. And I always like to think that the only way out of the experience is by going through the experience. Like, unless we want to like chop the experience off, cut it off, and like drop out from the experience. And that's a really bad habit to get into, because like we said, in life, you can't just choose to sit down at the aid station and say, right, I'm not doing anymore. I'm done. This is it. So if you just understand that the only way out of this experience is by going through the experience, then you're just like, okay, I need to accept this. This is how my body feels. I'm going to accept it, and I'm just going to keep moving forward. And the great thing is that the highs and the lows never last forever. And so if you're feeling great, I never try and grasp or cling on to that experience of feeling good, because I know that too will end soon.
Yeah.
And knowing that the good moments, not trying to cling on to them and just letting them be, that will help you when you're in the dark moments, when you're in the moments of the most possible difficulty and intensity. Because if you weren't clinging on to the good moments, you'll also not cling on to the tough moments.
So we're kind of back full circle to the beginning, 2,500 years ago, the Buddha's teaching.
Yes.
No clinging, And
no grasping.
no grasping.
Because when we feel good, we try and cling onto the good, how we feel at that moment. But when we feel bad, we try and grasp, no, I don't want to feel like this. I want to feel like I felt before.
Yeah.
And both of those situations cause suffering. So it's just a pure existence of understanding. It's just experience. You're just cycling through. It's like a wave. You're going from a feeling amazing to feeling terrible to feeling amazing.
Yeah.
And they will always continue to change.
Yeah, and there's peace and poise underneath that wave. So I
Yes.
think if you practice spirituality and you have a spiritual practice, you dive deep within and you discover that underneath all the experience that life gives you, whether they're good or bad, you can be in complete peace. So I often have the analogy of the Ferris wheel.
Oh, yes, I love
I
this,
like that one.
please.
Life is like
Sure.
a Ferris wheel. We all are in one of those, what do you call them?
Cabins.
In the cabins on the Ferris wheel, and we're just turning around. And let's say the top of the Ferris wheel, you have the best view around you. You know, your life is going great, everything is smooth. But then also the Ferris wheel just continues, and you're at the bottom. And the bottom is like, adversity.
But I wanted to be at the top.
You wanted to be at the top, but now you're at the bottom. And then, but the wheel goes on, and all the time you're going from adversity to prosperity. This is the game of life. But then I think when you start to meditate, it's like your little cabin starts to shift all of a sudden, and it starts to gravitate towards the center of the Ferris wheel.
That's how that works.
That is how it
unbelievable.
works. And so then the actual movements are not as dramatic anymore.
Yeah.
When you're on the outside of the Ferris wheel. So you still experience some prosperity, some adversity, some good, some bad. It becomes less and less. And then the yogi who has perfected his meditation, is in the center of the Ferris wheel. And when you have perfect poise, perfect inner peace, you've achieved those qualities through your meditation, then you're in the center, and whatever happens outside, life will still go on, will still turning. You will still have the same experiences outwardly, but you yourself will not be affected. So you are in complete peace. And it's not that you become indifferent. So there's a big misunderstanding there that people say, well, then, nothing matters anymore. You become this kind of bland, uncaring person, indifferent.
The stone Buddhas.
The stone Buddhas.
We don't want to become stone Buddhas.
We don't. We don't want to become stone Buddhists. But that experience of having real inner peace, I mean, that is unbelievably valuable. Because then even in hardship, you can enjoy the beauty of it even. You can almost look at it from an outsider's perspective and say, wow, life is really hard right now. How beautiful.
Yeah.
And then a moment later, life is really beautiful and sweet right now. How beautiful is that?
Oh, so you don't say how hard when it becomes beautiful?
Yeah. You might say how hard because I know it's going to turn back again. But like I remember Sri Chinmoy saying, life's wisdom comes from accepting life's ups and downs soulfully and equally. So that life's going to go up and down, but just accept it with some equanimity.
Yeah, with some poise and dignity.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than losing your dignity in the moments of greatest challenge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I've got a few other points that we could look at here. How are we going time-wise?
Oh, I think we still have maybe 10 minutes to go.
Okay, so these are three qualities that I find that are really powerful in transforming the experience that you're having during the race or during any hardship. And so we can finish with those, I think.
Sure.
And so the first one of those is acceptance. So we've talked a little bit about that, but simply by the acceptance of the experiences that we need to have to go through and to get out the other side, that transforms the experience immediately. And so I think the worst suffering occurs when we get to the point where we wish we were somewhere else doing something else.
Yeah.
So if you're doing an ultramarathon and you suddenly start wishing that you were on the couch at home with a bag of Doritos, then you're really going to suffer because that's not where you are.
Yeah.
If you've got 20 Ks to go and it's raining and it's cold and you feel terrible, then you're really going to be suffering because of the contrast between where you wish to be, what you're grasping for, and what you're actually experiencing.
So the secret is to really wish you were there.
To be where you are.
Be there and accept it.
So that's really powerful. The next thing that I have here, which I've used many, many times, is the power of gratitude. And gratitude transforms.
We have to do an episode on that sometime.
Yes, we'll do a whole episode, but we'll just touch on that for a few minutes. And gratitude is basically seeing things for how they truly are, which allows you to see that you have so many blessings in that particular moment. So if you're seeing things, but your perspective is not clear and you're seeing things from too small a perspective, if you're too caught up in your own
Give an
pain.
example from.
So say you're running a race and you're got 20 kilometers to go and you've been running in the mountains and your quads are just destroyed and you feel like, oh my God, I feel so terrible. The more you pay attention to that negative feedback, the worse the experience seems to become. So you're on this negative downward spiral. And so what we want to do is we want to try and zoom out and try and see, first of all, by just seeing one good thing. So I always tell people, you can always find one thing that you can be grateful for. And it may not be anything to do with your own body. You may look around and think, well, the sun's about to rise and I love a good sunrise. So I'm grateful that the sun is about to come up. Or you could look around and you could be running with some other runners. And I've used this example before, but you could look at them and think, wow, this other runner, they've got an amazing outfit. Like, look at their socks and look at their shirt. Like, they're so nicely matched together.
Can you be grateful for that?
You can choose anything to be grateful for in this world.
That's wild.
And so if you can find one thing to be grateful for, it suddenly opens a crack. And so if you've been going down and down into this dark abyss, and then this one thing you choose to be grateful for, because it's the thing, you choose to be grateful for things in this world. And so if you choose to be grateful for that one thing, and it could be your own body. It's like, well, I'm cramping. I've got my quads are destroyed and I've got really bad chafing, but at least I'm not nauseous. So I'm grateful that I'm not nauseous in this moment.
Yeah.
And so suddenly that opens a crack of light, starts like shining down into this dark place that you've created for yourself. And it provides a way for you to start to climb upwards instead of continuing on downwards. And so that's where you start, at a dark place. But if you're running and you're feeling good, like, you should be so grateful for that moment, not worried about how it's going to turn out in the end, but for that particular moment you're experiencing right.
But that gratitude transforms the experience.
It does.
It makes it more bearable. It makes it less horrible.
Exactly. It changes everything. Yeah. And so one of my first big international races was American River 50-mile race in 2012 in California. It goes from Sacramento to Auburn, and it runs along the American River, and then it finishes. The first half is on bike paths. The second half is on trails. It's 50 miles long, so around 80-something kilometers. And I traveled out there in 2012. I didn't know anyone else at the race. I traveled out there by myself, stayed in a hotel room, turned up to the race in the dark, didn't know anyone else. The race started, and I found myself in the lead group and running along, and everything's going well. And early on, I was wearing merino socks, and it was really cold, and my merino socks felt really stiff, and I developed this blister under the ball of my foot, really early on in the race. And so I was running on this blister for the first half of the race, and I kept on thinking I needed to stop to put do something with it, like put some padding on it or put a bandage on it, drain it or do something, because I was feeling like it was becoming a problem. But slowly, one by one, guys started dropping back from the lead group, and it ended up just with me and one other American guy running along together. And then we hit the trail. And I kept on thinking, I need to stop at an aid station and do something with my blister. And when I really decided, I thought halfway I'll do it. And they said, we're really sorry, we don't have anything to deal with blisters. So
I said that at the aid station.
Yeah. So I was like, oh God. So I just kept on going. So we hit the trail, and immediately, as soon as we hit the trail, this other guy was a road runner and immediately dropped back.
Wow.
And so suddenly I'm leading this race. And I could not believe it.
This was your debut in ultra running?
This was my first big race I'd ever done in America. I'd done a few races in New Zealand. I'd done a race in Australia, but I hadn't raced overseas in like big time races. And this was one of the biggest races in America at that time. So it was like more than 1,000 runners. And suddenly I was so shocked that I was leading this race. And no one teaches you how to win well. Like, there's no guidebook for like runners. Like, okay, if you find yourself in the lead of the race, this is what you should do.
Yeah.
And it's actually a really unusual situation leading a big race, because suddenly when you're just running your race for yourself, your mindset is focused on your own performance normally. And normally there's someone else and you're like, okay, I'll just try and stick with these people for as long as I can. But suddenly when you find yourself in the lead, your mind suddenly takes you to a whole different place, because suddenly your mind starts to think, it's now your race to lose.
Yeah.
It's like, don't lose this.
Yeah.
So instead of thinking, wow, imagine if I had, so before I wasn't even thinking about winning it. I was just thinking I'd like to place well. I'd like to run as fast as I can. I'd like to, like, have a good performance. And so I found myself leading the race, and I had 24 miles to go at this point, and I'm running along. It's beautiful. We're next to the river, and every time I hear a twig crack, I hear a noise in the forest. I'm like, who's that? Who's coming? Who's coming to steal this race off me? And so I was clinging on to the experience. I was clinging on so hard because suddenly it felt like it was my experience and it could be taken away from me.
Yeah.
And I realized this is so wrong.
You realized this during the race?
During the race, like just 25K, like say 24 miles to go, I took the lead and I was by myself. And maybe for a few miles, I'm running along like that, worried about what's happening behind me. And at some point, I'm like, I just have to let this go. I cannot cling on to this race and this result for the next 20 miles. It'll take me like 2 hours.
Yeah.
It's like, this is totally unsustainable. So what came into my awareness was I'd read a comment, something Sri Chinmoy had written about gratitude. And he'd written something along the lines of it being a miracle power here on earth. And so it just came into my mind. And I'd read that same phrase many times before, but somehow it really had some resonance with me at that moment. So I brought that to the fore, and I felt that this was the solution to the problem that I had found myself in. So I was in a situation where there was a problem, was like how to best position my consciousness to have the best possible experience. And I realized it was only going to be through gratitude that I was going to have the best possible experience. And so what I started doing was I started to create gratitude inside of me. And so I started doing that within myself, first of all. And I started saying to myself, I'm so grateful for being here in this particular moment, having this experience right now. It's not that I was grateful that I was going to win the race, because I wasn't in control of that. I gave up any attachment to the result, and instead it said, I'm so grateful for this exact moment right now. To be here, to be healthy, to be running well, to be feeling good. Like, this is amazing. Like, it doesn't matter what happens in 5 minutes.
It reminds me a lot of the story we did in one of our earlier episodes with a triathlete.
Yes.
Who also had that experience. Like, I love being here.
Yeah.
He was also leading the race. And instead of like being so worried, like, oh, my competitors are coming to
it totally changes, and suddenly you're so happy with the experience you're having. And the more you can feel gratitude for that moment, the more you fall in love with what you're doing. And that was the other quality that I wanted to talk about, love. And that example of Pete Jacobs we talked about in one of our first episodes is a perfect example of that, where he, because of his some insights he got around the way he was dealing with racing, he realized he needed to love what he was doing more and more, and that would allow him to give himself more fully to the experience. And so that's what I was finding, that the more grateful I was for this experience, the more I was like, my God, I love this sport. I love what I'm doing, and I love this experience I'm having. And the more you love something, the more you can give yourself fully to it. It's like your family or your loved ones, or something that you truly deeply believe in. You're willing to make whatever sacrifices are necessary to maximize the experiences for those people and for that cause. And so I was running along, and I was feeling gratitude, and I was feeling like I was loving what I was doing. So I was giving myself more fully to it. And then I took the next step, and I started to think, I knew you and some of my friends were already in New York for our meditation celebrations in April. And so I thought, wow, if my friends could see me right now, they would be so happy. So I'm so grateful that I'm having this experience, but I was expanding it to include other people beyond myself. Yeah. And I was thinking my family, my parents, my brothers and sisters, if they could see what I was doing now, that I was, having this experience of running through the forest, feeling great and having a great performance, they would be so happy to see me doing that. And that made me more and more grateful. So it was this beautiful relationship with gratitude and love. And I definitely feel like it really brought out one of my best ever performances. But it purely came from, it wasn't that I was feeling physically amazing that day. Like, I still had the blister the whole time, but it no longer bothered me.
Wow.
When I really had my relationship with the present moment correct, with the attitude of gratitude, suddenly the whole thing was so meaningful and enjoyable. And the last 20 miles, I just ran faster and faster and finished with 3 miles straight uphill. And I really gave myself fully to the experience, and I was enjoying every step of the way.
Wow.
So it was, for me, it really revealed that gratitude is a miracle power here on earth. If we can create gratitude in our life, and especially in times of hardship, it's very easy to have gratitude when everything's going well.
Yeah, and also this is, of course, running is an analogy. You know, you don't have to be a runner to benefit from that, from those things we talk about. You can apply to any activity that involves hardship.
Yeah.
And even if life goes bad, find something to be grateful for.
Yeah.
And
Even
write
if
it
it's
down,
just that
keep a
someone
journal.
has some really funky socks.
Oh, I love that.
You know?
Yeah.
You can often find such a thing.
Or here in Holland, the beautiful yellow or red pants.
Oh yes, whenever I see someone walking down the street in Holland and I see them wearing red or yellow pants, I feel grateful that there's such a person exists in this world that has a pair of yellow or red trousers.
Yeah, and they're not afraid to flaunt them. You know?
Exactly.
Well, great. I think that's a maybe wonderful point to wrap it up for today.
Yeah, I think so.
Dear listeners and viewers, thank you for staying with us so far. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will be churning them out again once a week. And you're staying here with me for a couple of days. And I hope we have a wonderful time together here. We're going to do some trips, and we'll see you again next week. So please subscribe if you enjoyed the podcast. Leave a comment or tell a friend, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.